Every species voted to enslave Earth. Now they all plead for mercy. The judgment. The courtroom stretched beyond sight, its crystalline walls pulsing with alien light. 10,000 species sat in judgment, their forms ranging from towering to ethereal energy beings. At the center of it all stood alone in shackles that hummed with containment fields. "The final vote," announced the supreme arbiter, its voice a harmony of whale song and grinding stone. The creature's four arms gestured toward the massive holographic display showing Earth, blue, beautiful, and defenseless. All in favor of enslaving the human species. Watch the lights cascade across the amphitheater. Green for yes, red for no. His heart hammered as the count climbed. 9,500, 9,800, 9,999. One single red light flickered in the darkness. "The vote is decided," the arbiter intoned. "By overwhelming majority, the human species is declared property of the Galactic Confederation. Their world shall be harvested, their people shall serve." The alien that had voted against the measure, a small, crystalline being with faceted eyes, caught gaze. Even across the vast distance, he saw something that looked like regret. Had been Earth's only ambassador, the single human allowed to plead their case. He'd shown them art, music, literature. He'd explained human compassion, their drive to protect the weak, their willingness to sacrifice for others. None of it had mattered. "Take him to the processing center," the arbiter commanded. "Begin preparation of the harvest fleets." As the guards moved toward him, smiled. It was a cold expression that made several nearby aliens step back. They thought they knew humans. They thought they understood what they were dealing with. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. The shackles around his wrists were made of quantum-locked titanium, impossible to break by any known method. The guards were battle forms, each one capable of tearing through tank armor. The transport ship was surrounded by a fleet that could glass continents. None of that mattered. Because 3 hours ago, before the final vote, had activated something hidden in his diplomatic pouch. A small device no larger than his thumb, designed to look like a simple data recorder. But it wasn't recording data, it was transmitting. Everything the Galactic Confederation had said and done in this courtroom had been broadcast directly to Earth. Not just the audio, but detailed quantum scans of every species present, their technology, their weaknesses, their home world locations. Earth now knew exactly who had voted to enslave them. And Earth had been preparing for this possibility for longer than the galaxy realized. As the transport ship began its journey toward the processing station, leaned back and closed his eyes. In his mind, he could picture the reaction happening right now in the bunkers beneath Geneva. Admiral Sarah Washington would be reading the transmission data. Dr. James would be analyzing the alien biosignatures. Commander Wei would be preparing the activation codes. The aliens thought they were harvesting a primitive, defenseless world. They'd made their decision based on Earth's public face, the carefully crafted image of a species just beginning to reach for the stars. They didn't know about the black sites, the shadow projects, the weapons that officially didn't exist. They didn't know that humanity had been expecting this day for 30 years. The transport shuddered as it docked with the massive processing station. Through the viewport, could see the industrial nightmare that awaited Earth's population. Sorting bays where beings were categorized by usefulness. Conditioning chambers where minds were broken and rebuilt. Shipping containers where the enslaved were stored like cargo. Soon, they expected, those containers would be full of humans. A guard grabbed by the shoulder, its claws pricking through his diplomatic uniform. "Move, slave. Time to learn your new place in the galaxy." Let himself be pushed forward, his smile never wavering. "You know," he said conversationally, "there's an old human saying you might want to learn." The guard's mandibles clicked in what might have been curiosity. "Don't poke the bear." The guard didn't understand. None of them did. But they would. As was processed into the station's holding cells, stripped of his uniform and given prisoners rags, a countdown was already running in his head. The transmission to Earth had included precise coordinates for this facility, every ship in the harvest fleet, every world that had voted for enslavement. In approximately 72 hours, humanity's true nature would reveal itself to the galaxy. The other prisoners in his cell were a mix of species from recently conquered worlds. They looked at him with a mixture of pity and resignation. Another broken civilization. Another species ground under the boot of galactic civilization. If only they knew. Settled into his bunk and began to wait. Somewhere in the cell block, he could hear the sound of alien machinery preparing for Earth's harvest, the construction of slave ships, the programming of conditioning equipment. Soon, very soon, those machines would serve a very different purpose. The small, crystalline alien that had cast the single dissenting vote materialized outside his cell. Its form flickered like light through a prism as it studied him through the energy barrier. "I am Ra of the Shimmer Collective," it said, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I voted against your enslavement." "Looked up, why?" "Because I have studied your species longer than the others. I have seen what you do when cornered, what you become when you have nothing left to lose." The alien's faceted eyes seemed to glow brighter. "I fear we have made a terrible mistake." Smile returned, cold and sharp as a blade. "You have no idea how terrible." The awakening. Admiral Sarah Washington stood in the command center, buried 3 miles beneath the Swiss Alps, her weathered face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. Around her, the most classified facility on Earth hummed with barely controlled chaos. "Confirm the transmission," she ordered, though she'd already read data packet 17 times. "Confirmed, Admiral," reported Lieutenant, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Every word, every vote, every species signature, they want to enslave us." Sarah nodded grimly. She'd hoped they'd never need Project Prometheus. For 30 years, ever since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, they'd been preparing for this exact scenario. The galaxy had seemed so advanced, so civilized. But Sarah had lived through enough wars to know that civilization was often just a thin veneer over something much darker. "Status report on all Prometheus sites," she commanded. The responses came in rapid succession from hidden facilities across the globe. Site Alpha, Mojave Desert, fully operational. Site Beta, Siberian Tundra, weapons hot. Site Gamma, Australian Outback, standing by. Site Delta, Amazon Basin, ready for deployment. 12 sites in total, each one housing weapons that the galactic community didn't know existed. Couldn't know existed. Because humanity had learned the first rule of galactic politics very quickly. Never let them see your true strength until it's too late for them to stop you. Dr. James materialized beside her, his holographic projection flickering slightly as it transmitted from Site Beta. "Sarah, I've finished analyzing the biosignatures transmitted. The diversity is staggering: silicon-based, energy-based, crystalline matrices, quantum consciousnesses. But they all share one common weakness. Which is, they've grown soft. 10,000 years of galactic peace, of easy conquest of primitive worlds. Their military doctrine is built around overwhelming primitive civilizations, not fighting an enemy that can actually fight back." Sarah allowed herself a cold smile. "Show me the Harvest Fleet composition." The hologram shifted, displaying the alien armada currently en route to Earth. Massive ships, each one capable of processing millions of humans. The sight should have been terrifying. Instead, Sarah felt the familiar calm that came before battle. "Doctor, activate Prometheus Protocol Alpha. All sites full readiness." "Sarah," James's voice carried a warning. "Once we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what we really are." "They made their choice when they voted to enslave us," Sarah replied. "Now they get to live with the consequences." She turned to her communications officer. "Get me a direct line to President Martinez. It's time to brief the world leaders on what happens next." As the connection established, Sarah thought about, alone on that processing station, probably thinking he'd failed in his mission. He'd done exactly what they'd hoped, given them intelligence and bought them time. Now it was her turn. The president's face appeared on the main screen, drawn and worried. "Admiral, I've been briefing the Joint Chiefs. Please tell me you have good news." "Mr. President, the situation is exactly what we've been preparing for. They voted to enslave us. All of them except one." "One? A species called the Shimmer Collective. They're likely our only potential ally in what comes next." President Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "How long until the Harvest Fleet arrives?" 71 hours, 37 minutes. "And our response?" Sarah's expression hardened. We remind the galaxy why apex predators shouldn't be caged, sir. Meanwhile, aboard the processing station, had made contact with Ra of the Shimmer Collective. The crystalline alien had been visiting him regularly, drawn by what it called probability cascades surrounding the human. Your people are coming to rescue you, Ra observed, its form shifting through the spectrum as it spoke. I can see the quantum echoes of their preparations. Looked up from his bunk. Not to rescue me, I'm expendable. They're coming to send a message. What message? That slavery works both ways. Ra's form flickered with what had learned was alarm. You speak in riddles. My species has a long history with slavery, explained. We've been on both sides of it. We know how it works, but more importantly, we know how it ends. How does it end? Stood, moving closer to the energy barrier that separated them. In blood, always in blood. The question is whose. At that moment, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as automated voices announced in a dozen languages. Quantum signatures detected, unknown vessels approaching. But knew it was already too late for alarms. Because the first phase of humanity's response wasn't an invasion fleet. It was much worse. Through the station's massive viewports, strange lights began to appear in space. Not ships, at least not ships in any conventional sense. These were constructs of pure energy, geometries that hurt to look at directly, weapons that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Humanity hadn't just been preparing for war. They'd been preparing to rewrite the rules of war entirely. The Harvest Fleet's commander, a massive cephalopod-like being named Moore, received the first reports with dismissive tentacle waves. Primitive human vessels, deploy standard suppression protocols. But as his weapons locked onto the approaching constructs, something impossible happened. The humans shot back. And their weapons didn't just destroy matter, they deleted it from existence entirely. The first Harvest ship simply ceased to be. One moment it was there, a kilometer-long monument to galactic engineering. The next moment there was empty space where it had been, not even debris to mark its passing. Moore's confidence evaporated like moisture in vacuum. What are these weapons? How is this possible? His science officer, a crystalline being not unlike Ra, turned multiple eye stalks toward him. Commander, these energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. The humans appear to be using principles of physics we don't understand. As if to emphasize the point, 3 more Harvest ships simply vanished from existence. The battle had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been holding back for 30 years. The unveiling. Commander Wei materialized on the bridge of the construct designated Phoenix 7, his consciousness interfacing directly with weapons that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Around him, reality bent and twisted as humanity's true military might revealed itself to the galaxy for the first time. Target acquisition complete, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah, her mind linked to targeting systems that processed information faster than quantum computers. Harvest fleet composition, 4,700 vessels, ranging from battle cruisers to processing ships. Smiled as he felt the Phoenix 7's weapons charging. Each construct in humanity's fleet was powered by contained black holes, their weapons capable of editing matter at the subatomic level. Begin systematic deletion. Leave their communications active. I want the rest of the galaxy to hear this. The Harvest fleet tried to adapt, their commanders shouting orders across quantum communicators. But their weapons passed harmlessly through humanity's ships, which existed partially outside normal spacetime. Meanwhile, human weapons continued their terrible work, not destroying enemy vessels, but simply removing them from existence entirely. Aboard the processing station, watched through the viewport as the massacre unfolded. The massive facility shuddered as nearby explosions sent shockwaves through space. This is impossible, whispered a guard, its mandibles clicking in distress. How can a primitive species possess such weapons? Looked at the alien with something that might have been pity. You never asked the right questions. You saw our public technology and assumed that was all we had. You never wondered what we were hiding. Ra appeared beside him, its crystalline form flickering with distress. Your people are committing genocide. Thousands of beings are dying. Yes, replied simply. just like the thousands who would have died processing Earth's population into slaves. The only difference is that we're doing it faster and more efficiently. But this level of technology, how long have you possessed these capabilities? Was quiet for a moment, watching another harvest ship simply cease to exist. We've been spacefaring for less than a century by galactic standards, but we've been at war for 10,000 years. War with each other, war with our environment, war with extinction itself. You species had the luxury of evolving in peaceful galaxy. We didn't. The processing station rocked again as something massive detonated nearby. Through the viewports, could see the twisted remains of what had once been the Harvest Fleet's flagship. Every human is born into a world that's trying to kill them, he continued. Disease, natural disasters, other humans, aging entropy itself. We don't just fight wars, we fight reality itself on a daily basis. And we've been winning. Emergency broadcasts flooded the galactic communication networks. Reports of impossible human weapons, of ships that couldn't be touched, of a species that had hidden technological capabilities beyond anything the Confederation had encountered. In council chambers across the galaxy, species that had voted for Earth's enslavement began to reconsider their decision. The hive mind, a collective consciousness spanning 12 worlds, sent the first desperate message. To the human military forces we wish to negotiate. Our vote was made in error. Commander Wei, still linked to Phoenix 7's systems, intercepted the transmission. His response was broadcast across the galaxy on all frequencies. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. But the real terror was still to come. Because the fleet attacking the Harvest ships was just the beginning. On Earth, Doctor stood in Site Beta's control room, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that controlled weapons the galaxy couldn't imagine. Sarah, we have successfully field-tested the deletion cannons. Effectiveness is even better than projected. Admiral Washington nodded grimly. Good, Phase 2 is authorized. Begin planetary targeting. Across the galaxy, long-range sensors began detecting new energy signatures. Not ships this time, but massive constructs materializing in deep space. Weapons platforms the size of moons, each one aimed at specific worlds. The worlds of species that had voted to enslave humanity. In the system, home to the arthropod-like beings who had authored the enslavement proposal, alarms began shrieking as sensors detected a construct materializing at the edge of their solar system. The weapon was the size of their smallest moon and radiated energy signatures that made their most sensitive equipment overload. Premier of the Council sent a desperate transmission to Earth. We surrender, we withdraw our vote, please show mercy. The response came not from Earth, but from the construct itself. Commander Sarah's voice, artificially amplified to carry across an entire solar system. You voted to process our children into slaves. You voted to harvest our world. You voted to break our minds and bodies for your convenience. There is no mercy for slavers. The weapon fired. It didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, along with its 12 billion inhabitants. One moment there was a thriving world with cities, oceans, and a civilization spanning. The next moment there was empty space. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer asking to be left alone. They were demanding it. Panic spread across the galaxy as species after species realized that they were now targeted by weapons they couldn't understand or defend against. The votes for enslavement, cast so casually just days before, now seemed like death sentences. Back on the processing station, the alien prisoners watched in stunned silence as their former captors ran in terror. The guards abandoned their posts. The station's automated systems began shutting down as skeleton crews evacuated to escape pods. But remained in his cell waiting. Because he knew the humans weren't done. They were just getting started. As the last of the Harvest fleet dissolved into quantum foam, a new ship appeared. This one was different, clearly human in design, but unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Sleek, predatory, and radiating a sense of controlled violence that made space itself seem to bend away from it. The ship docked with the processing station and smiled. Admiral Washington had come personally. The reckoning. Admiral Sarah Washington stepped through the breach in the processing station's hull, her advanced combat suit humming with energy shields and weaponry that existed in folded space. Behind her, A squad of human special forces moved with the fluid precision of apex predators finally unleashed. The station's corridors were eerily quiet. Most of the alien staff had fled in escape pods when the Harvest fleet was deleted, leaving behind only automated systems and abandoned prisoners. Admiral's voice came through her suit's communication system. "Cell Block 7, Level 12, and Sarah, there's someone here you need to meet." Sarah nodded to her team and made her way through the massive facility. The architecture was designed for beings much larger than humans. Soaring ceilings, wide corridors, everything built to accommodate species of vastly different sizes and shapes. But the purpose was unmistakably sinister. Processing centers for breaking minds, sorting bays for categorizing slaves, shipping containers designed to transport conscious beings like cargo. She found in a cell with several other prisoners, including a small crystalline being that flickered between different spectrums of light. "Admiral Washington, I presume," the crystalline alien said as Sarah's team dissolved the energy barrier. "I am Ra of the Shimmer Collective, the only species to vote against your enslavement." Sarah studied the alien carefully. Intel suggested the Shimmer Collective possessed advanced probability calculation abilities. They could see potential futures with startling accuracy. "Why did you vote against us?" "Because I foresaw this moment," Ra replied, its form shifting to what Sarah recognized as the crystalline equivalent of a shrug. "I saw the quantum echoes of humanity's true nature. Your species doesn't just respond to threats, you eliminate them entirely." Stepped out of the cell, accepting a weapon and combat armor from one of Sarah's soldiers. "How many worlds, Admiral?" 17 so far. We're working our way through the list of everyone who voted for enslavement." Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing routine operations rather than genocide. "The galaxy is starting to understand that actions have consequences. And the ones who surrendered. We accepted 7 surrenders so far, species that immediately their votes and offered full reparations. The others," Sarah gestured toward the viewport, where the remains of the Harvest fleet still glowed like dying stars. "The others got what they voted for." Across the galaxy, emergency sessions were being called on every major world. The vote that had seemed so unanimous just days before was now being frantically reconsidered as species after species watched their neighbors simply vanish from existence. In the Great Assembly on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Confederation's capital world, panic had replaced the casual arrogance that had characterized the original vote. Supreme Arbiter 5, its 4 arms gesticulating wildly, tried to restore order to the chaos. "The human response is completely disproportionate. They're committing genocide on an unprecedented scale." The delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a sophisticated field matrix, pulsed with agitation. "They deleted the entire hegemony, 40 billion souls gone in an instant." "Because the hegemony voted to process human children into manual labor," replied Ra, who had managed to establish a quantum communication link from the processing station. "What did you expect? Strongly worded diplomatic protests." The chamber erupted in angry chittering, roaring, and harmonic resonances as 10,000 species tried to speak at once. "Silence," Five's voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, brought a temporary quiet. "We must find a solution. The humans must be stopped before they destroy half the galaxy." "With what?" asked Ra calmly. "Every military force sent against them has been deleted from existence. Their weapons operate on principles of physics we don't understand. And now we know they've been hiding this capability for decades." The truth was sinking in across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just more advanced than anyone had realized. They were using technology that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Doctor, monitoring the galactic communications from Site Beta, smiled as he read the intercepted transmissions. "They still don't understand," he told his research team. "They think we're using some unknown alien technology." "Aren't we?" asked Dr. Susan, sister, and one of the project's lead theorists. "No, this is pure human ingenuity. We took the scraps of physics they shared with us 30 years ago and extrapolated from there. They gave us the basics of faster-than-light travel and energy manipulation, thinking we were too primitive to do anything dangerous with it. And instead, we spent 3 decades pushing those concepts to their absolute limits. Every human who's ever said, 'What if we tried this instead?' contributed to what we built. The galaxy shared their technology with us, thinking they were giving toys to children. They didn't realize they were giving weapons blueprints to a species that spent 10,000 years turning farming tools into instruments of war. Back on the processing station, Sarah was reviewing the intelligence data had gathered. "The Shimmer Collective seems to be our best hope for a reasonable negotiation," she told her team. "Everyone else is either fleeing the galaxy or marshaling what military forces they have left." "Are we really going to keep deleting entire worlds?" asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Until every species that voted for our enslavement either surrenders unconditionally or ceases to exist," Sarah replied. "We're not interested in being fair. We're interested in ensuring this never happens again." Ra's form flickered as it processed probability cascades. "Your strategy is effective but dangerous. At the current rate of elimination, you'll have destroyed roughly 30% of galactic civilization within a standard month." "Good," Sarah said. "That should make the remainder more cooperative. Or more desperate. Desperate beings do unpredictable things." As if summoned by Ra's words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The remaining automated systems were detecting massive energy signatures throughout the galaxy, not human signatures, but something else entirely. On the main display, new contacts appeared across dozens of systems. Ships unlike anything in the Confederation's databases, angular and predatory, emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. "Admiral," Lieutenant's voice crackled through the communications array from Earth, "we're reading massive unknown contacts across 17 systems. Energy signatures are off the charts." Sarah felt the first chill of genuine concern since the operation began. Origin. "Unknown, but Admiral, they're heading for Earth." The galaxy's response to humanity's rampage was apparently more organized than they'd expected. And humanity was about to face something that might actually be able to fight back. The war for Earth's freedom was about to become something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. Part 5, The Ancient Enemy. The ships that emerged from torn space were unlike anything in galactic records, monstrosities the size of small moons, their hulls pulsing with veins of dark energy that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with predatory grace despite their massive size, and their very presence made reality twist and writhe around them. Doctor's instruments screamed warnings as the alien constructs approached Earth's outer defense grid. "Sarah, these energy signatures, they're not just unknown, they're impossible. These things are generating negative energy densities that should collapse into black holes." Admiral Washington, still aboard the processing station, felt her blood chill as she reviewed the sensor data. "How many ships?" 300 and counting, and Admiral, they're not from this galaxy." On Nexus Prime, the Great Assembly had descended into absolute chaos. Species that had been voting to enslave humanity just days before were now screaming for human protection as the extragalactic ships began targeting Confederation worlds. Supreme Arbiter 5 tried to maintain order, but his four-armed form was trembling. "What have we done? What have we awakened?" Ra's crystalline form blazed with horrific realization. "The probability cascades," they're clarifying. "These ships aren't responding to humanity's actions. They've been coming for months. The quantum signatures suggest they're from the void between, the space between galaxies." "That's impossible," protested the delegate. "Nothing can survive in intergalactic space. The radiation, the cold." "Nothing organic," Ra corrected. "But these aren't organic, they're something else, something that feeds on civilization itself." The first extragalactic ship reached a minor Confederation world in the Outer Rim, 9, home to a peaceful species of aerial beings who had voted for human enslavement without a second thought. The alien construct settled over the world like a cancer, extending tendrils of dark energy into the planet's atmosphere. Within minutes, the world's population began to change. The screams echoed across galactic communication networks as their minds were rewritten, their bodies transformed into extensions of the invading ship's consciousness. They became part of something vast and hungry, a collective that had been feeding on civilizations for eons. "They're called the Devourers," Ra explained, its form flickering with terror as the probability streams revealed more. "Ancient beyond measure, they consume not just matter or energy but the very concept of civilization itself. They've been dormant in the void, waiting for a signal to wake them. Sarah felt the pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. The Galactic Communications Network. When every species voted on Earth's fate, the combined psychic resonance of 10,000 civilizations making a unified decision. Created a beacon, Ra finished. A signal that reached into the void and told them that this galaxy was ripe for harvest. The irony was staggering. The galaxy had voted to enslave humanity, and in doing so, had awakened something that would enslave them all. Across the galaxy, devourer ships began their terrible work. Worlds were consumed not through destruction, but through conversion. Entire populations were transformed into extensions of the collective consciousness, their individual identities dissolved into something vast and alien. But when the first devourer ship approached Earth, something unexpected happened. The construct's tendrils of dark energy struck Earth's defense grid and simply stopped. The negative energy that had effortlessly penetrated every other world's defenses couldn't breach whatever humanity had built to protect their home. How? The devourer ship's voice echoed across all frequencies simultaneously, a sound like civilizations dying. What defenses are these? Commander Wei, still linked to the Phoenix 7 construct, smiled grimly as he watched the alien ship's confusion. You want to know our secret? We've been fighting things like you for our entire history, not from space, from inside our own heads. The truth was devastating in its simplicity. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their stubborn, violent refusal to be consumed by any collective, no matter how powerful. The devourers fed on civilizations by absorbing individual consciousness into their collective. But humans had spent developing defense mechanisms against exactly that kind of mental intrusion. Every human religion, every philosophy, every art form was ultimately about maintaining individual identity in the face of forces that wanted to dissolve it. The devourer ship tried again, pouring more dark energy into its attempt to breach Earth's defenses. The planet's shields, built not from technology but from the concentrated will of 8 billion humans to remain themselves, held firm. Impossible, the collective voice hissed. All consciousness can be consumed, all individuality can be dissolved. Not ours, Wei replied, and in his voice was the echo of every human who had ever fought against hopelessness, every individual who had ever refused to surrender their identity to a larger cause. We're too stubborn to die and too mean to quit. The battle for Earth had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a war between collective consciousness and absolute individualism, between ancient hunger and stubborn human refusal to yield. And across the galaxy, species that had voted to enslave humanity began to understand that they had awakened not one nightmare, but two. The question now wasn't whether humanity would be enslaved. The question was whether anyone would survive to see how this war ended. On the processing station, alarms blared as devourer ships approached. Sarah Washington made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. All human forces, new priority target. Forget the enslavement vote. We have a bigger problem. Looked at her with surprise. We're going to save them after what they tried to do to us. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. We're going to save ourselves. Because if these devourers consume the galaxy, we'll be alone in the void with things that make our worst nightmares look like bedtime stories. She paused, watching as human constructs began shifting their targeting from Confederation worlds to the approaching extragalactic threat. Besides, she added, we can always finish enslaving them ourselves once we've dealt with this threat. The galaxy had awakened 2 apex predators. Now they would learn which one was more dangerous. Part 6, The Alliance of Necessity. The first joint Human Confederation battle took place in the Rigel system, where a devourer ship the size of a small planet was converting the local population into extensions of its collective consciousness. The sight was horrific, billions of beings having their individuality stripped away, their thoughts absorbed into something vast and alien. Admiral Washington watched from the bridge of her command ship as human constructs fought alongside hastily assembled Confederation fleets. The irony wasn't lost on her, protecting the same species that had voted to enslave them. Phoenix 7, target the Devourer's consciousness nodes, she ordered. Beta 4, cover the evacuation ships. Commander Wei's voice crackled through the quantum communicators. Admiral, the Devourer ships aren't just using dark energy, they're weaponizing the collective consciousness of their victims. Every mind they absorb makes them stronger. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human deletion cannons that could erase matter from existence fought against dark energy weapons that consumed the very concept of individuality. Confederation forces, despite their terror of humanity's capabilities, found themselves fighting desperately alongside the species they'd tried to enslave. On Nexus Prime, the Great Assembly had become a war room. Supreme Arbiter 5, his four arms trembling with exhaustion, coordinated defense efforts across the galaxy, while species after species fell to the Devourers. "They are gone," reported a spider-like delegate from the Outer Rim. 17 billion souls absorbed in 6 hours. "The Helix Nebula colonies have gone dark," added another. "No response to any communications." Ra materialized in the center of the chamber, its crystalline form blazing with urgent energy. "The probability cascades are converging. We have perhaps 6 standard days before the Devourer Collective reaches critical mass. After that, they'll be unstoppable." "What does critical mass mean?" Five asked, though his tone suggested he didn't want to know the answer. "It means they'll have absorbed enough consciousness to begin consuming reality itself. Not just matter or energy, the fundamental structure of existence. They'll turn our galaxy into a void zone, a space where consciousness cannot exist." The chamber fell silent as the full horror of their situation sank in. "How do we stop them?" asked a delegate from the Crystalline Communion. "We can't," Ra replied simply, "but the humans might." On Earth, Doctor was analyzing battle data from across the galaxy, his mind racing through possibilities that would have been unthinkable just days before. "Sarah, I think I understand why our defenses work against them." "Explain." Admiral Washington's voice came through the quantum link from her command ship. "The Devourers consume collective consciousness, civilizations, hive minds, species-wide cultural identities. But humans never developed a true collective consciousness. We're the only species that maintains absolute individuality even within group structures. That's why they can't absorb us directly, but it's also why they're so dangerous to everyone else. Every other species in the galaxy has some level of collective identity that makes them vulnerable." Sarah processed this information while watching human and alien forces fight desperately to slow the Devourer advance. "What are you suggesting, James?" "I'm suggesting that we're not just immune to their primary weapon. We might be able to weaponize our immunity."